Hello, my name is David Lalazern. I've been involved with herbs for over 30 years as a pharmacist, an herb shop owner, and now as a videographer. So I was interested to see an article in our local paper about a place called Uriel Pharmacy that manufactured herbal remedies based on the anthroposophic philosophy expounded by Rudolf Steiner. I decided that I needed to find out more about anthroposophy. To do that, I contacted Mark McKibben, the pharmacist and owner who created Uriel Pharmacy. The pharmacy is named after Uriel, the archangel of summer. And the pharmacy is on a 4-acre farm in rural southeastern Wisconsin. Mark and I got together for a couple of days, one in early autumn and one in spring, to talk about the use of herbs in anthroposophic medicine. The first thing I asked Mark to do was explain how Rudolf Steiner was involved in herbal medicine.
It really goes back to like the 1920s. Steiner was I guess you could call him a philosopher. He was a seer or a clairvoyant person, but he wanted to teach people or make available to people how spiritual things could be, how should I say, how they could be understood scientifically. Not just that it would be a religion that you'd have to believe in. He wanted to encourage people to be independent thinkers and understand things out of their own energy. So these doctors came to Steiner in the early 20s because they sensed that he knew something that could help them to be better doctors. So most of them were homeopathic type doctors. And they said, you know, talk to us. We want to hear what you have to say about medicine. So he started giving talks to them, which were written down, all kind of new ideas about medicine. And part of his understanding of medicine is that there's more than just a physical body to the human being. There's a life body, which we have in common with the plants, and what he called the astral body or the soul body, the sensitivity body. It's what we have in common with the animals. And he said what we have that the animals don't directly have is this individuality or ego principle, whatever you call it. Something that says I to ourself. We're a distinct individual. And he brought in the ideas of reincarnation and karma also, saying illness comes mostly from the, how do you put it, the mistakes or errors that we've made, mostly coming from our astral body, which is also not just sensitivity, but our desires come from the astral body, or come through the astral body. And this, in a previous life, our actions, our thoughts, our feelings, if they're not in harmony, they could lead to illness in a later life. They could lead to illness in the same life, but some things they don't manifest until the next life. So his idea was if you want to treat that, you have to look and see, well, how's the arrangement of these 4 bodies, the physical body, the life body, the soul body, and the ego, how do those relate to each other? And how can you influence them by appropriate medicines? So that the person could be stimulated to reorganize those bodies in a way that would be healthy. It's not like anthroposophic medicine is a certain thing that is prescribed what to do. You know, it's really, anthroposophy is not like a religion where you're supposed to follow certain things. It really should be like science exists so that you can understand phenomena broadly. You can apply it to almost anything. And this, what Steiner calls spiritual science, it's a set of ideas or exercises that one can do that could give one insight into what's going on in the world. So all kind of alternative therapies could maybe be appreciated even more than the person that works with anthroposophic medicine. The doctor uses whatever therapy they think is appropriate. If you need acupuncture, you do acupuncture. If you need herbal medicine, you do that. One of Steiner's ideas was if you give more, you need to give more massive doses of medicine for things related to digestion. He sort of looked at the human being as being 3 parts. He said there's nerves and senses, which is focused in the head, but the nerves go through the whole body. But he said the nerves and the senses are a certain functional part of the human being. The movement of our arms and legs, movement of the digestive organs, the intestines, that's like another part of the organism. It has more to do with will and action. It has less to do with thinking and awareness. Mostly we're unaware of our internal organs, and if we move our arm, we have an intention to move it, but it's not really that conscious. It happens. Whereas in the head, it sort of sit still and you can have thoughts about things. And he said connecting these two is the whole heart and breathing and circulation. So he taught doctors how to observe illness, and I can give an example in a second of how these three aspects, like threefold human being, works together. So he said if you're treating something that's more digestive or movement oriented as a problem, you typically need more herbal strength doses of things. If you're treating something that has more to do with nerves or senses, sensory disturbances, you'd use more highly potentized things. And typically in anthroposophic medicine, you go up to about 30x. It's rare that we go higher than that. Typically, we don't use higher potencies. And if you're treating something having to do with heart and circulation, typically you would do more in-between potencies. So that's kind of his take on that. When we make herbal extracts, this particular pharmacy, we try to make without the use of alcohol whenever possible. For topical preparations, arnica essence, calendula essence for compresses and things, sometimes we'll use alcohol, but most of our preparations, we do something, it's a kind of rhythmical treatment of the plant. We'll harvest the plant, we harvest it at sunrise, because that's when the life forces are most concentrated, before it's really unfolded. And then we chop it up, mash it up in a mortar and pestle, combine it with water, and then these two boxes behind you, those are incubators where one is at body temperature, the other's at room temperature. And we start this plant mash off in the warm, dark incubator. Yeah, so I've got these two boxes. This one is heated, so keeps it about body temperature. And they're both boxes, they're double walls, and they're filled with peat on the inside. So it's like all surrounded, top and bottom, all four sides surrounded with peat, which kind of gives it a insulation and an isolation, so that it's kind of just a barrier between what's outside, what's inside. It also keeps it dark, and this one is surrounded with lead sheeting inside too. So that gets it pretty isolated. So about an hour before sunset, right about now, I come over and open it up. Sometimes I have like 30 gallons of different things going on in here. Just a few days ago we had, 10 or 12. Tonight there's just this one in this box, and this is echinacea. It's really just water and plant, essentially. And then we started fermenting. We don't really add anything to make it ferment, and it doesn't make alcohol. There's lactic acid bacteria everywhere in nature. And if you give them the right conditions, they'll start digesting this plant material. And it ends up making an acidic liquid that's very stable. So it lasts for years, indefinitely, without the use of alcohol. So this has been sitting in the warm incubator since this morning at sunrise. So it's been kept warm and dark all day long. Then I just take a wooden spoon and give it a good stir. See how it's doing, see how it's smelling. See how it's looking. You can see there's little bubbles here. It's kind of bubbling and fermenting, little air bubbles. It smells good. It smells spicy. Echinacea is a real spicy smelling plant, especially when you're doing this to it. And what we're going to do, we're going to put it outside in the light. It's like an hour before sunset. So for 2 hours, an hour before sunset, through sunset, an hour after sunset, it sits outside in an ice bath and chills down, it contracts. So this box here warms it up till about 98.6, and that is special temperature. It's our temperature, but it's also a temperature at which water holds the most heat. So that's kind of a special expansive temperature. Water is most expansive, holding heat. And oppositely, when we put it in the ice bath, we cool it down to about 4 degrees centigrade. It's just above freezing. It's about 36, 38 degrees. And that is the greatest density of water. That's where it's the most contracted. So when it actually freezes and becomes ice, that's why ice floats on top of the water, because the cold water underneath is more dense than the frozen water on the top. So that's kind of an extreme. From one hand, 98.6, greatest specific heat of water, and the greatest density of water at about 36 degrees. So we're kind of emphasizing that polarity, that dynamic of expansion and contraction. Just like we're also emphasizing light and dark. It's dark all night, it's dark all during the day. It's only at sunrise and sunset we let it out to absorb this great dynamic. You know, when you just go outside and watch the sunset, if you take time to do that, or you get up early and watch the sunrise, it's really a special time. There's a lot of color changes, a lot of mood changes, kind of breathing, interesting time. Everybody relates to it differently, but Steiner talked about there being special healing forces that are active in nature at that time, sunrise and sunset. Basically, we're putting these plant extracts out here at those times to absorb those energies. And we think that makes it a better medicine, and it's a pretty cool thing to do too. Warm incubator is when we start the process, we start the fermentation. I'm just going to close this up so we keep the heat in there. And the way we heat it is we've got hot water pipes on the bottom. So we circulate hot water through copper pipes on the bottom. And over here, about halfway through, I should maybe mention, we do this process of exposing to the sunlight, sunrise and sunset for a week. And about halfway through, we'll squeeze out the plant matter from the extract. We'll keep the juice. This is calendula here. The herb, the leaves, and the orange flowers. That looks kind of cool if you can focus in on that. This has sat still for the last 12 hours since this morning, or longer than 12 hours, and it's made different layers here. We've got green and white, kind of different colors of brown, kind of a reddish layer here. And what we do with that is we stir this also, because it's just all liquid. We can just make a kind of a vortex. So each one of those, we give it a stir. What that does is it kind of wakes up the juice. Whenever water's moving, you know, when water is stagnant in a swamp, it's kind of dead. When water's trickling down a mountainside in a stream, it's more alive. And there's something about that movement, many surfaces brushing against each other, circulating, that draws in energy from the cosmos. I made some ash of calendula, stuff that we pressed out from there. We burned it all the way down to ash.
And in making ash, we need to start a flame. There we go. And we'll move this right into the center of it. And that will actually take a few hours. Ash is an oxygen type process, where if we were making charcoal, we would actually cover the crucible and keep oxygen out of the picture. But in making ash, it's an oxidization procedure. So what we're going to have to do is, when we see the top part ashing over, we're going to take a a tool in there and keep turning it to expose it to oxygen as well. And this is going to take a couple hours for it to be done.
And at the very end of the 7 days, in fact, this calendula, after tonight, it'll be done tomorrow morning. And we'll add this ash to the bottles. So it gets some of the mineral substance of the plant added back to it. So now we'll put these outside. So we just put the bottles in this tub with a little water in the bottom. That's echinacea. These are calendula. I do the two-handed carry because I'm confident that I'm not going to drop them. It would be a disaster to drop one of these after all the effort that went into it. You know, I suppose it doesn't have to be exactly 2 hours. It's really more the idea of that window of time of the sun going down and conversely the sun coming up. So at the end of the day, the sun's going down, the light goes away. By the time we're finished, the stars will be out. So when I put these away, I'm going to swirl them again to take in some of that star energy, like opening and closing the door. And then when I come back in the morning at 4:30, the stars will be out. Maybe the birds are thinking about starting to chirp. And we'll swirl and we'll put them out here again, or we'll stir. And then it goes the opposite direction from dark into light. And we put them away when the day is strong.